Our guest today is Sister Bernadette from Maitland in Cape Town, and she's a sister from the Holy Cross, an order in the Catholic Church. Welcome, Sister Bernadette.
Thank you, Johan. Goeiemôre almal.
You've got a strange accent,
Very.
and we're looking forward to get to know you better, Bernadette.
Thank you, Johan.
Can you tell us, how did Christ call you into this way of life as a sister of the Holy Cross?
My vocation goes back to growing up in the north of Ireland, in an all-Catholic community. Everything was around the church. School was around the church. The social environment was all around the church. And it was whenever I was at first year at high school, and the Holy Cross sisters came from South Africa, and they were sharing with us as young people about their life on the missions, about their life in community, and about their love relationship with God. It was on that very day that I felt a very deep passion within my heart, hearing God calling me, and in turn I would give my life to Him as a Holy Cross sister.
And you were only 12 years old at that stage?
Yeah, just 12 years of age.
And what happened when you decided to go? Did they accept you immediately?
No, I wrote to them that day and said, may I come? And they wrote back to say, no, you're far too young, you can't come. And I continued then with life. I love sports. I came from a sports family. And it was when I was 15, the sisters contacted me again and invited me to come and spend the weekend with them. And then since I was 15 until 18, I went once a year, workshops and spent time with the sisters. And at the age of 20, then I decided to leave my country, leave my family, leave all of the dreams that I had as a young woman, and decide to give my life to following Christ.
And then you took the vow of poverty, celibacy, and obedience.
Yes.
I'm especially interested in the celibacy.
I thought you would.
Now, be honest, don't you think you miss out something? Why do you took an oath like that? And it's a difficult living that way for you.
Living the 3 vows and living the vow of chastity is a personal choice we make. I really appreciate marriage and the gift of children, but I have renounced that because of my love for Christ and the knowledge and the felt experience of knowing His love for me. The challenge of that, well, like all other human beings, we experience loneliness in our lives. We don't get the joy maybe of seeing ourselves grow up in our children. But there are so many other benefits of giving your life for other people. It's not just about me and mine, but it's about everybody else out there and trying to give our lives so that we serve God's people.
Yeah. Don't you find that people look a bit strange at you?
All the time.
Okay.
No, I think many people have a great admiration for the life we live, even if they don't say it. Heads do turn. Even yesterday, a few heads turned when I came here. But I think some might think our life is a strange way of life. But once you've given your life to God, the strangeness is not there. It's a love commitment. It's what we choose to do to really live our lives to the full. And in terms of human freedom, we gain so much other love, just giving our lives for others, knowing that Christ is at the heart of everything.
Yes. Now, can you talk about the center, the heart of your motivation and the way that you live your life? You know, you have a charism as an order. Can you talk to us and explain to us what that is?
A charism, basically, I would say, from my own life experience, is like an embodiment or a reflection of the characteristics of Jesus Himself. We are called to live among God's people as Jesus lived among them before us. Our charism is centered on the Paschal Mystery, which is the dying and rising of Jesus Christ. How that manifests itself in our lives is that all our days are spent in trying to bring hope into hopeless situations, bringing new life into death experiences, helping people uphold their own dignity and integrity, and realizing that somebody else out there cares for them, in the hope that through us they will find God's love.
Okay. So you are particularly drawn to where there's death and hopelessness.
Yes.
And then you move into those places, into the lives of that people to bring resurrection.
Yes.
Can you tell us just one story of how it happened to you?
I'll share my most recent experience. I have come to live in Cape Town for the last year and 5 months. And when I came there in December last year, there was a fire in the local informal settlement, a very small informal settlement, and everybody lost everything they had. Their shacks were burnt to the ground, and they had nothing left except what they had on them. And I really felt God calling me to go out there, to get involved in some way. I had no idea how. And anyway, just talking with the people there, and particularly a group of young women that I came in contact with, and eventually we decided we have to do something more. And through talking to them, they share their life with me, they tell me their life stories, their struggles, and we decided that we would start a sewing class so that these young women could come and be taught how to sew in the hope of making material items that maybe they can sell and get some money to rear their children. Many of the people in that particular formation are into drugs, into promiscuous ways of living. They have really little. And recently I interviewed one of those young women, and she told me that since she has joined the sewing class, her life is changing because it keeps her focused and away from indulging in drug usage.
Okay.
So for me, that's a success story. Yeah.
Okay, so something as small as helping people to sew and getting the
Yes.
community together had a big impact on somebody there.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me, what's the effect of the way that you live on yourself? You know, and in being obedient to Christ, trying to follow Him. How has your life changed, and what happened to you?
Since Christ was always part of my life as a young person growing up, I was a daily communicant. I went to church every day in my life. And Christ has just taken over my life, and that's why at one stage I could give everything to Him. He impacts on my life in that through the journey of growing into a deep, intimate love relationship with Him, I have grown in inner human freedom. And I think this is the search, the ongoing search to find my true self in the light of Christ and to become the person that really He planned and is continuing to plan and create. So that's the journey, yeah.
Okay. If you look back, or if you look at your life, what would you say really gives you life? And then on the other side, what's very challenging to you?
What gives me life is first and foremost the privilege of being called by Christ. To know that He has chosen me among many others, and that He has a purpose for calling me to do what He is asking me to do. That gives me life. My life is enhanced deeply by my love relationship with Him, by my prayer life. Prayer is priority in our lives. And I think serving God's people really gives me life, keeps me going, knowing that I'm not doing this for myself, but that I am moving out among God's people because He's in the middle of them and He wants me to give what I have for them. Living also as a sister, we take the vow of poverty. So we live in community, we own nothing of our own. Everything we have, except my clothes, we share with each other. And it's just that sense of finding fulfillment in looking out towards the needs of other people and trying to alleviate them. Challenges come, I think, because we live in community. In my community, we are 4 sisters, and we are 4 different nationalities. We range from the age of 28 till 90. So you can imagine all 4 of us in the kitchen trying to make the dinner. There are many challenges there, Johan.
I can imagine 4 women, 1
Disaster.
kitchen. Yeah. Yeah. So it's being human and the normal little challenges of every day that
Yes.
you find, Jane. Sister Bernadette, thank you very much for visiting us and for sharing with us your art and your life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Johan. Thank you.
Good morning, friends. It's always good to be with you, and it's good to be with you today. I want to begin with a question. It's a very simple question, but it's also a very, very serious question. I want to ask you, how happy are you at the moment? Now, behind the polite smile, your Facebook profile, your Instagram pics, really, how happy are you? If I were to ask those who live with you, maybe your partner in marriage or your children or your parents, if I were to ask your colleagues at work about you, your friends, how would they respond to that question? I love the story of that woman at work who's asked by her colleague, did you wake up grumpy this morning? And she said, no, I let him sleep in. We all want to be happy. I think God has wired us for joy, for deep happiness. And I think one of the tragedies is that very often we go looking for happiness in those places which really cannot give us a lasting and rich and deep joy. Some of us go looking for happiness in pleasure, nothing wrong with pleasure, but we seek to pack our lives full of it, just hoping that somehow it will really give us what our hearts want. Some of us buy lots of things, some of us go from one relationship to another, some of us feel that maybe if we can only find the right person, we'll find real joy. Some of us depend on good whiskey. Where do you go looking? Now, it's against this backdrop today that I want to share with you just one sentence. And I'm hoping that you will memorize this sentence through the week so that God can speak to you again and again through this one sentence. It's a sentence that Paul wrote to the church in Philippi. Now, some of you will know that when Paul wrote the letter to the Philippians, you may know that Paul was in jail. He was in prison. And you may also know that the letter to the Philippians is considered to be the most joyful letter of all the letters that he wrote. It's permeated with happiness. It's almost as if Paul had discovered a joy, a happiness that wasn't dependent upon external circumstances. And so he writes to the Philippians, and here is the sentence. It comes from Philippians chapter 2, verse 4. And he writes these words, and he says, "Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too." And just for a few moments, I want to hold that sentence before you, because hidden away in that sentence is the gospel secret to a life of a profound joy and a deep happiness. Notice, first of all, what Paul is not saying. Paul is not saying here that we must neglect ourselves. He's not saying that. He's not saying that we must make ourselves to be a doormat that everyone can walk over. He's not saying that. He's not saying here that we mustn't be interested in our lives and how they're going and our relationships and our finances and our work. He's not saying that. Don't look out only for your own interests. He's warning us here not to build our lives around ourselves. He's speaking about the danger of self-interest. Paul knows that self-interest and happiness just don't go together. Paul knows the consequences of self-interest in our lives. He knows that. He knows that self-interest wrecks marriages, destroys intimacy. He knows that self-interest wrecks friendships. He knows that self-interest makes genuine colleagueship at work impossible. He knows that self-interest can rob a team of team spirit. He knows that self-interest can sabotage the soul of a community and of a nation. He knows that. And we know that too. We just look around South Africa at the moment and we see the devastating consequences of self-interest. And Paul says, don't look only to your own interests. There will never be joy and happiness if we go down that pathway. But I want you to notice what he does say positively. Look at the second part of that sentence. Don't look only to your own interests, but take an interest in others too. Paul is encouraging us here to let Christ lead us out of our little world of ego and self, and to let Christ lead us into God's bigger world of people. To begin to take an interest in the well-being of those around about us as well. Paul knows that happiness can never be an end in itself. If you aim for happiness, you know this, I know this. If we aim for happiness, we always miss it. That happiness comes as a byproduct of a certain kind of life. That happiness comes as the fruit of a life that is other-centered. That happiness comes as we give our lives away in servanthood and service. there is a profound joy and a deep happiness. I've just come back. I've been lecturing overseas at a university, and I was there for 3.5 weeks. And while I was there, in the middle of my lectures, the arm of my spectacles broke, which is a disaster. And so I asked my fellow lecturer, a wonderful man, a psychiatrist. His name is Ross. And I said to Ross, do you mind taking me downtown? We were near Malibu. Take me to an optometrist, see if I can get these spectacles repaired. So he took me downtown to Malibu. I kept an eye open for Beyonce, but I didn't see her. And I went into the first optometrist's shop. Guy said, "What can I do for you?" And I noticed that he looked at how I was dressed, that I was dressed very casually. And I'm pretty sure he thought to himself, there's no money here. I said, "Could you fix my glasses, please?" "I can't help you. You need a new pair." So Ross and I walked out, and I said to Ross, "Let's go to another optometrist." Round the corner, another optometrist guy came. "How can I help you?" I said, the arm of my spectacles is broken. He said, "Fine, give it to me." Went behind the counter, 5 to 10 minutes, fixed it up, brought it out. He said, "Here it is." I said, "How much will that be?" He said, No, it's just lovely to be able to do this for you." And so as we walked out the shop, I turned to Ross. Now, remember, he's a psychiatrist, so he's looking at everything through those eyes. I said, "I can't believe this. 2 optometrists, totally different experiences." And he said to me, "I wonder who the happier optometrist is." Joy comes when we begin to take an interest in those around about us. Happiness begins to fill our lives when we genuinely want to give our lives away to those that we work with and live with and share with. The last thought I want to share with you doesn't come from this verse. It comes from something that Jesus said, because Jesus said exactly the same as Paul. During his life, Jesus said to his disciples, and I want to share this with you from Matthew chapter 10, verses 39. He said these words. He said, "Don't look out." He said, "Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it." What is Jesus saying there? He's saying that if you concentrate all the time on your own life, you lose it. You lose it. But if you're willing to lose your life, give your life away for the sake of the gospel and for the sake of others, you begin to discover life in all its riches, all its fullness, in all its depth. Can I invite you today to let Christ lead you out of a life dominated by self-interest into a new life of other-centeredness? I want to suggest a practice, something that you can do today, this coming week, that may help. When we greet each other, have you noticed we've got a simple question that we often ask, but we seldom mean it. It's a very important question. And often we say to people, "How are you? How are you?" I don't know how many times I've been asked that question, and before I can answer, the person's disappeared. And how different it is when someone asks you that question and really gives you the gift of their interest. It's a beautiful gift. A beautiful gift. I wonder what it would be like to go home today and to maybe say to those in your own family, how are you doing, really? And maybe when you go to work tomorrow, to really show an interest in a colleague, how's it going? How's it going? Maybe when you hang out with a friend, just to let Jesus draw you out of your own world. And to ask this question, to really mean it, to really mean it. And it's as we allow Christ to lead us out of a self-centered, self-interested, self-absorbed world into this large world of God and people, we begin to discover what joy is all about. Let me end. There was a wonderful Methodist missionary. His name was Stanley Jones. And Stanley was a missionary in India for many, many years. And once he spoke some words that when I heard them, I knew I would never forget them. And he said these words. He said, you know, in this world we have two groups of people. We have a very large group of people who live only for themselves. And he says, they are the most miserable people you can find. And then he said, there are those who have given their lives away to God and to others. And their lives are filled with a wild, wild joy. And I'm inviting you today to begin to discover in your own life the gift of this wild, wild joy as you let Christ lead you out towards others. Let's pray together. Dear God, we often speak about deep things here on a Sunday and things that we don't normally talk about during the week. Thank you for these words of Paul. And we ask, Lord, that through these words you will speak to our lives today very, very personally. We ask, Lord, that somehow you may touch our lives and that our lives may be filled in a new way with your love for others. And that you will draw us out of our prisons of self-interest and self-centeredness, that you will draw us out of these prisons so that we can discover the joy that you want to give us. Will you teach us, Lord? Will you show us? Will you help us how to genuinely, genuinely take an interest in those around us? This is our prayer, our request. We offer it to you with all the love and longing of our hearts. And we say together as God's people, Amen. May the wild, wild joy of Christ be with you. Bless you, friends.